Shalom, shalom. This video is about the gospel portion of Parashat Noach. It's from the gospel according to Luke chapter 17, verses 20 to 27. In this passage, the Pharisees asked Yeshua when the kingdom of Adonai will come. It's a question that's often asked in our day as well. And Yeshua's curt answer to them was that the kingdom of Adonai does not come with signs to be seen. And he cautioned them and us against chasing after sensational rumors. I confess that just as many people at the moment have egg on their faces for subscribing to a Sukkot 5786 rapture, I have done that in the past. Do you remember all the dark planet and Anunnaki and reptilians hype that developed around what was perceived to be the Revelation 12 sign back in 2017? And I was susceptible then because for a long time, since my teens in the late 1970s, held on to the expectation that 2018 will be a year of prophetic significance, because that's the year in which the state of Israel turned 70 years old. The alternative count, which is counting from the restoration order going out to restore Jerusalem after the 6-day war, as it was in Daniel's prophecy for Yeshua's first coming, that date is 1967. So that's another 19 or 20 years after 2018. And certainly it is later than what I wanted it to be. But this is my human understanding. It was my understanding of the fig tree parable, and it has been proven wrong, as the Messiah did not return in 2018. But as I said, my hope was really based on these things coming about. So 1948 was a more attractive year for me to start the count of 70 than what 1967 is. I would have done well if I took Yeshua's advice from the first verse that we read now earlier in my life. The signs will be there, but it will not be easily discernible. After he answered the Pharisees curtly, Yeshua turned to his disciples and shared more than what the Pharisees heard. He indicated that people will long to see his return, but it will not happen yet. He said that there will be many false alarms, such as the events I mentioned earlier. Now, the false alarms will be like, you must know the little story of the boy called Peter who cried, "Wolf, wolf," so often that nobody paid attention anymore, and then the wolf came. In our text, Yeshua then goes on to explain how these end-time events will happen, and it's a two-step process in his explanation. And he explained the first coming of Messiah that's himself, of course, in Luke 17, verse 25 to 27, to suffer and to be rejected as the Messiah ben Yosef, the son of Joseph, or the suffering servant Messiah, also known as the leper Messiah. Yeshua explained that as it was in the days of Noah, so it will also be in the days of the Son of Man. The son of Joseph, an analogy, comes from Judaism, where it is anticipated that the Messiah would come either as the son of Joseph or the son of David. And from studying both the Old and the New Testament, we believe that both descriptions are correct, that he came as Messiah, son of Joseph. He will return as Messiah, the son of David. In his first coming, he was the son of Joseph, who was despised and sold into slavery, just like Joseph, who was rejected by his brothers, but who eventually became the ruler over Egypt. Yeshua became the salvation of his people, like Joseph did. Like Joseph did for his brothers, the time will come upon a second coming or return that Yeshua will reveal himself to his people by showing the marks on his body as proof of his identification. Joseph showed the mark of his circumcision. Yeshua will show the marks in his hands and his feet, maybe in his side as well. Just as Joseph revealed to his brother came with the words, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph, and that is rated as the worst words to have been heard in the entire Tanakh. I anticipate that Yeshua's words, when he returns, when he says, Ani Yeshua, I am Yeshua, to the people who refuse to acknowledge him, that the impact of those words will even be more dramatic and more severe. In the days of Noah, people were happily going on in their daily routine, completely ignorant of what was about to happen. And as we await Yeshua's return, we need to occupy ourselves with our daily activities and not be completely ignorant of the fullness of time, as many people sadly are. Those who were unprepared were swept away in the flood. Only the prepared ones were raptured in their vessel of escape. You should read the parable of the 10 bridesmaids with this in mind. The second step or example given to the disciples in Luke 17 verse 28 to 30, he compared his return to the days of Lot. And once again, everybody was in the days of Lot were busy with their daily slog, just as we must be busy with our day. And just like Lot and his 2 daughters, we have to work, but we have to be aware of the times and be prepared to flee to safety and to go to a safe place. The flight through the valley created by splitting the Mount of Olives for all who reside in Jerusalem will be such an escape route, such a rapture. I fleshed this out a little bit more in the prophet's portion. But I cannot suppress my thoughts of Abram's negotiation with Adonai to save the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and eventually negotiating God down to 10 people. If 10 righteous people are found, then the cities will be saved. But as was the case in Noah and for Lot, the remnant was less than 10 people, so that even Abraham could not negotiate Adonai out of his divine plan unfolding on earth. In the case of Noah, there were 8 people on the ark. In Lot's case, the opportunity to escape was offered to either 6 or 8 people, but alas, the 2 sons-in-law declined the invitation, and Mrs. Lot longed for what they left behind. So in the end, only 3 were saved. And then, of course, you'll notice in these numbers, I may be missing out on 2 people, right? If there were 8 and not only 6. But let me take a short detour here, a rabbit trail. Lot's wife fled, maybe under protest, from Sodom before the city was destroyed by fire. She looked back longing for what she was leaving behind. And for that is the reason why she turned into a pillar of salt. Christians interpret these events that she and Lot had 2 daughters, and they fled with those 2 daughters. And that Mrs. Lot longed for her treasures, a new evening dress that she left at home, or a favorite piece of jewelry. But in Judaism, the interpretation is that Lot and Mrs. Lot had 4 daughters. The 2 younger ones fled with them, but the 2 older daughters who were engaged to be married, they stayed behind with their fiancés. And both these interpretations fit the facts given to us in the Bible. But taking the 4-daughter example now, it could very well be that Lot's wife looked back to see if her other 2 daughters were also coming, and her longing to save her 2 older daughters caused her to be caught in the destruction of the city. Her love for her daughters caused her not to adhere to Adonai's demand to flee without delay. and her tottering along the way caused her death. She intended to flee, but then, as it said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And this hopefully gives some color to what Yeshua said, as it was in the days of Lot and as it was in the day of Noah. Please note what Yeshua said in Luke 17, verse 32. If you attempt to save your livelihood, your favorite couch, your pillows, your car, your whatever, instead of putting your trust, your faith, your emunah in Him alone, just like Lot's wife, you will lose your life. But if you trust Him, He will save you. The emphasis on you, and this does not extend to your next investment portfolio or to the etchings on your wall, and not even to your beloved family members or your friends. When He says, if you trust in Him, He will save you, He means you. Each one of us needs to have a personal relationship with Him to be saved. And therefore, it is time for us to differentiate between the things of eternal value and the things of passing temporal value. If we cling to Yeshua, then our things of eternal value will be secure. And in this clinging, I pray that Adonai Eloheinu will bless you and keep you, that He will shine His face lovingly upon you, and that He will be gracious to you by restoring you to life after the judgment. I pray that He will provide for your every need, and I'm sure that He will, and that He will ultimately give you shalom. Shalom means to make you complete and to give you peace, inner peace, even in a world that's going to hell. Shalom, shalom.